first, middle-income countries are also contributors to IDA. So there's receiving, but also providing. But as a rule of thumb, when you're in a middle-income country, you still depend on MDBs for pushing the frontier of your economy. You're no longer necessarily just going to certain projects. It's more a policy-based lending. It's more pushing the envelope with the private sector. It's more with trying to collate work across different MDBs to push investments. So it's not fully detaching, but I think the level of involvement, the dynamics of involvement is different. So we should not just unplug. We might need to think together on how to make the access as efficient as possible. And I think this is the thinking with the One World Bank group, which is taking place now. So that's a point I want to make. The other point is, in order to move from a low-income country to a middle-income country, there's a lot of value in what is being done on the bilateral and multilateral level when it comes to technical assistance, capacity building. So we do not want to miss that as well, because that's money which is provided in many instances by bilaterals and trust funds and so forth. So it's not just the simple loans that come from the IMF or the World Bank. It's deeper than that. It's wider than that. Today we're also talking on some modalities of financing, such as debt swaps, which are taking place either on a bilateral level or now also under the multilateral umbrella. So middle-income countries provide a very good experiment of how to use financing tools in a different manner or a more efficient manner.
So for you, it's a different kind of role than necessarily what they're playing in the low-income countries,
Yes.
but it's a role that is an important part of your development and financing strategy and knowledge sharing.
It's important, but also there's a lot of there's a lot that the country has to do. Today, everyone is talking about opening up for investments, making growth more investment-driven, not debt-driven, because all of us want lower debt, and I don't want to go through the numbers, but all countries, including middle-income countries, have debt burden. So it's in our interest to be more investment driven growth, but that requires structural reforms on our side. So structural reforms in many instances have implications, and that's why policy-based lending is sometimes the way to reach the goal of more investments coming into the country. But again, it's a reciprocal relationship. Finally, the concept of global public goods is an important concept. Any middle-income country, low-income country, taking from its own resources or borrowing in order to push education, health, etc. These are global public goods. It's good for the country on a national level, but it also helps the globe. So we should not see a country relying on IFIs or bilaterals only from a country perspective, but there's also a global perspective there. I always believe that it's a function of how ready the country is. So there are so many tools out there. How ready are you in terms of your banking sector, in terms of your intermediation, in terms of being able to create a platform for the different institutions to work together, MIGA with EBRD, in addition to BII, in addition to IFC. So there's also, even though we are a country that benefits, but also we have a responsibility, and we have a responsibility to make things as efficient as possible. And with what's happening globally today, the pressure is more on countries to get it right in order to benefit from the little money that, or in comparison, of course, to before. So I would say that there was a long discussion that all MDBs should have the same standardization of rules and paperwork. It will never happen. We have to be clear about that. Or if it will happen to some extent, not fully. So again, it's how fast the countries can make sure that all of this information that is coming in, that you are able to make the private sector aware of the instruments that exist. If you need to change a feed-in tariff to make the renewables possible, do it fast so that you can draw in more capital. So I'm maybe putting it more on the countryside, but at the same time, we are at a moment where I see MDBs working closer with each other. When you see EBRD with the World Bank, with others, trying to make sure that there's more familiarity between them, the technical staff are working closer. These are all good signs. So I think the will is there. And for us as countries, when we're looking at renewable energy, when we're looking at water desalination, when we're looking at today, everybody's talking about localizing industrialization, to some extent acting on your comparative advantage. So there's an element of structural reforms that we have to do, deepening financial markets. The World Bank and others have been thinking about local currency lending, which is important for private sector. Let's try and do that faster with each other. And just going back to Axel's point about World Bank versus consultants, there's an element of macro-critical and macro structures, which is an advantage that the MDBs have compared to consultancies. And we need to leverage on that so we can also move fast and demonstrate by example. If we have successful examples of private sector mobilization, let's shed light on them and see how we can actually replicate in other places. Just on the roles of the IMF and World Bank, I think that, and I thank Axel for bringing the knowledge bank in this slide, because development is a very important topic. Macroeconomics is the linchpin. You cannot have development without macroeconomic stability. So the IMF is known for that. But there's so much when it comes to the growth agenda, when it comes to the jobs agenda, when it comes to trying to deepen capital markets. So when I used to be a summer intern at the World Bank in '97 and in the IMF in '98, and then working in the institutions, it was very clear. Yes, basics have maybe a little bit, because macro-critical issues have been meshed a little bit, but I think that the bank has a comparative advantage. It needs to be very clear and leveraged when we're talking about IMF engagements. And this should be, and I keep on telling my colleagues at the World Bank, this needs to be very vocal when we're discussing at the IMF, under an IMF program. On blended, there are a few points. First, once again, it depends on countries leveraging on these resources, because they do exist. Going back to Axel's points, GCF is one of the slowest institutions. So sometimes people
reform
are
it.
Yeah, exactly. So MDBs are sometimes accused of being slow. No. They want to blend, and then you wait for 2 years to be able to get that grant component from climate. But there are other ways to get blending from grants, from in our case from AFD or from the EU and so forth. So again, advertising the mechanics of how this works could help countries cut corners in many ways. AI is, during COVID, we used to say leaving no one behind. I think AI, we're leaving countries behind because the gap is just a growing gap of productivity, gap of competitiveness. And I think there's going to be a lot that the World Bank can help countries in terms of what does the AI strategy mean, energy that is required for these data centers. Of course, there are copyrights and stuff like that, but what is it that we can do? It's a big topic, a big question. I don't think I have the answers, but I know it's a big challenge for countries that want to move forward. And let's just say we don't want to leave countries behind, because this is not going to be good for the world's security.